Welcome to Pinches of Salt. My name's Marleen Westerveld. In this lesson, we will talk about communication units and how to segment utterances. It shouldn't take you longer than 10 minutes to complete. So communication units are independent clauses with their modifiers. Now, to make it confusing, they can be incomplete, as in they can have a missing subject, for example, when it's an answer to a question. So if we consider this example where the examiner says, "Where did you go?" and the child said, "To the zoo," there is no subject in that sentence, but we would still consider it a communication unit for analysis. Now consider the following example. The examiner says, "Where did you go?" The child says, "I went home and she went to the zoo." Now in SALT, we segment this into two communication units. I went home and she went to the zoo. So what's the best way to remember this? Let's look at some hints. You really need to know your coordinating conjunctions. And it's a short list: and, but, so, and or. And then if that's present in the sentence, you need to check if there's a new subject after the conjunction. So in this case, she is a new subject. So that's why we actually segmented into two communication units. So let's go through some together and I'll put the hints back on to make it easier. I went home when she went to school. So when is a conjunction. In this instance, a subordinating conjunction. So this utterance is one communication unit. What about the next one? I went home, but she went to school. So we have but, a coordinating conjunction, she, a new subject. So in this instance, there are two communication units. The third one, I went home to see my sick brother while she went to school. While is the subordinating conjunction. So in this instance, even though there seems to be a new subject, it's one communication unit. What about the next one? My friend and I went to school. Well, my friend and I, in this instance, is the subject of the sentence, and we leave it alone. It's one communication unit. What about the next one? Mum says I need to eat veggies, so I stay healthy. In this case, so can be replaced with so that. Therefore, it's one communication unit. And the last one on this slide, I like soccer, so I go every day. In this instance, so is a coordinating conjunction, and we split it into two communication units. So here are the answers. Now let's look at a few more rules. Where did you go to school? Asked the examiner, and the child says Redlands. So remember, this is just a incomplete grammatical utterance, but it's in response to a question, so we call it a C unit. The examiner says, "Do you like it?" And the child says, "Yeah, I do." Now we need to separate the yes/no response from the utterance that follows. That's why "yeah" has a full stop. "I do" is a new communication unit. The examiner asks why. "I hate maths, I guess." In this instance, you do not separate the tag phrases and we leave it as one communication unit. And then after a 3-second pause, the child says, "Although I like reading." So we need to really consider pause time and intonation. It was very clear in this instance that the child came up with another thought. So we would consider that a new communication unit, even though although is a subordinating conjunction. So last one. The child says he found the boy and he said, "I'm ready." And the boy said, "Be quiet." So here I embed a dialogue quote. So we don't use quotes at all in SALT. You don't have to. And in this case, he said, "I'm ready" is one communication unit. And then the boy said, "Be quiet." Again, one communication unit. And then look at this last one, 33 words. It's a really, really long utterance. So have a quick look and make sure that it makes sense why we actually haven't segmented that phrase into smaller bits. Okay, let's wrap up this mini lessons and you can test your knowledge. So I'm not going to read them all out. This is actually a story retell where we ask children to retell Alice in the Suitcase. And I count 20 communication units. What about you? So pause the slide and have a go. And then you can find the slides and the answers on my website under e-learning, Pinches of Salt. For more information, as I said, you can go to my website. For more in-depth training, all free, you can visit the Salt software website, of course. All Pinches of Salt will be posted on YouTube. And to get updates about new training, you can subscribe to my Instagram handle. Thanks for listening.